Hello, you guys. Good afternoon. Um, so we're trying something a little different this afternoon. As a lot of you know, the yoga studio where I previously taught yoga is now closed due to the COVID epidemic and all the other things that went along with that. And so I'm going to offer some yoga classes online, live via Zoom, with the recordings posted on my YouTube channel after class. So it is Wednesday, it's noontime, and we're going to have a yin yoga practice for the next hour here. There are some things you might want to have at hand as you do your practice. Something to sit on. I've got a little meditation cushion that works pretty well for me, but a low pillow, something like that, maybe a yoga bolster. Um, Stack of blankets. Additionally, I have an extra blanket. It provides padding for knees and a little bit more height or the ability to adjust my height above the ground. And then some yoga blocks. So even more obscure, right? Not everybody has yoga blocks at home, but you can certainly use a couple of cushions or even some softback books or something like that. Basically all of these props provide a little bit of support and spacing for the various postures so that as we move into a posture and hold it for a while, because it's yin yoga, you'll be able to comfortably relax into it and let your body weight settle. Okay. So the other thing to know, especially if you have not done yin yoga before or are new to the practice, is that it's a very low to the ground, slow moving, long held practice. So we might do, I don't know, 7 or 8 postures, um, and hold each one for a time, breathing and adjusting as time goes on to create some deep stretch within the connective tissue of the body. So, and I'll explain that more as we go on. We are going to start sitting and having a little bit of breath work as a means of entering practice. And so I just suggest being up on your pillow or your cushion for that. Um, I'm going to have a blanket so I can pad the underside of my feet. For our breath work, I'd like you to have the feet together and the knees wide. Ordinarily, we cross the legs and sometimes sit on the heels as an alternative position. And we're going to start in this very elongated butterfly posture to do our breath work. So the feet are relatively far away from the hips. The spine is upright, and that little cushion underneath will help. And if your knees feel like they need a little extra support, you can use little pillows under the outside of the legs to just give them a little bit of boost. Okay. When you've come into a place that feels sustainable, we're going to close the eyes and begin a little bit of breath work. So the eyes either closed or unfocused if you're not comfortable closing the eyes. Drop the gaze just a little bit and start to become aware of the breath. Inhales and exhales passing through the nose. Slowly inhaling and slowly exhaling. Now, especially if you've been busy with something else in the morning or in the day, know that these initial rounds of breath just kind of bring you into an internal state of awareness, tracking the inhales and feeling their physical effects. As the breath draws down, filling the lungs, drops into the pit of the belly. You can feel the exhale and maybe even visualize it as it rises from the base of the pelvis toward the crown of the head. Feeling the lengthwise or up and down tracking of the breath. Begin to feel expansion outward and softening inward, Inhale's filling you, and exhale's emptying, creating space with your inhale and releasing tension on the exhale. For just about a minute more, maybe two, let's begin to regulate the breath a little bit. And we'll inhale over the space of 5 or 6 internal counts. And then as you exhale, exhale over the same time interval. Repeating this, the length of the inhale, matching the length of the exhale. Softening the muscles of your face, your jaw, your neck. Feel the release of the shoulders. The unbroken line of breath up and down your length from the pelvis to the crown to the pelvis. Relax your hands and feel the movement of air through the sides of the body. Two more rounds of breath. When you finished your last round of breath, just release all technique from the breathing. Don't try to match the inhales and the exhales anymore. Oh, they'll probably continue to do that naturally. Open the eyes and center your pupils in the eye space. Allow the chin to drop a little toward the chest. And then slowly roll the right ear toward the right shoulder. Take a breath here. On the exhale, release the head down through center. And from center, roll the left ear toward the left shoulder. Inhale here. Avoid elevating the opposite shoulder. Just let it drop away. And we repeat that another couple of times. Chin rolling down through center and then right ear to right shoulder. Breathing in without tensing the opposite shoulder. Releasing. You might feel a little bit of movement in the upper back or ribs. That's okay. Don't fight that. And then one more to each side. We are moving slowly with breath, trying to avoid heating up the body. So that's part of the yin style of yoga. We keep everything cool. After you've brought the left ear toward the left shoulder one last time, we'll bring the chin down in front and then lift the head. Take the gaze forward, and we're going to change the position of the legs, bring them forward as well. You might wish to continue sitting on your cushion. You might be ready to come lower. With the legs out in front, we're going to take a forward fold called caterpillar in yin. And you can use the blocks here as well. We're going to tilt the pelvis a little bit toward the thighs. And then we'll eventually round the spine over the legs and hold for a while. So we can do a little preliminary test, a little fit to see how that feels. If the underside of your knees needs support, you can put a thin layer of blanket there. And a little space between the legs is fine. Just don't let it be really wide. Wherever you go in terms of your initial posture, you want to support with your props. And so I'm going to make a little bit of a Stonehenge here that I can rest my forearms and my head on. Right? If you need something higher, you can put your bolster upright and lean into it. And of course, something lower, you can eliminate the blocks and fold over or eliminate the bolster and just rest onto your legs. So, with the pelvis upright or tilting forward, not backward, and the spine relaxing over, you settle. Resting in this position, and I'm going to come up so I can see you guys. Resting in this forward fold position, return to the regularity of the breath. You might once again count the inhales and exhales for length. Feel that the breath has that same sort of effect of opening, creating space, and releasing stress. Relax your feet and your ankles, and really relax any muscular effort. Another component of yin yoga, another real hallmark of it, is that we try to eliminate as much of the effort or the physical action um, as we can. So once you found posture, you just stay. And with the support of props, you'll find that little by little, you're able to release more and more of your body weight into the posture. That in and of itself creates the stretch, the opening, and the connective tissues. And it feels pretty good too. Now, you don't always have to be mindful of tracking the breath each moment while you're in posture, but do remain aware of what you're doing. So be present in your practice. Find mental discipline without physical effort. Stay in the moment without anticipation. We've been here for a little while. We have about a minute more to go. If you find that you feel like you could go deeper, or indeed it's time to back out, make that final adjustment. So, usually, after being in posture for a little while, we begin to find some release in the muscles and the connective tissue, and often it's possible to deepen. However, if you find that you're getting any numbness or any sharp sensation or electrical sensation, that is your signal to come up a little or to back out. We've got a few more breaths here and then we'll change posture. 3 more rounds of inhales and exhales. When you've finished your final round of breath, very slowly release posture. Restacking the spine. And when you're sitting up, go ahead and move your props out of the way. Bend your knees and lean back a little bit into your arms. As you lean back, you might take a little bit of a dip into one elbow and then the other, adding a little bit of twist to the spine, a little bit of stretch into the shoulders. Mhm. Move your head in any way that feels healthy. And then squaring off the shoulders, but still leaning back a little bit, widen your stance on the floor and allow your knees to drop to one side, both in the same direction. Mhm. And go the other way as well. Often this is called windshield wipering the feet or the legs. We just want them to switch side to side, get a little internal, external rotation through each side, and your hips will roll a little bit too. When you've done all of that, return to sitting. Um, we're going to take a twist and we're going to have kind of that internal, external rotation through the legs. So you'll probably want a blanket nearby as well as a block. And we'll let the knees drop off to the right. That's going to tend to lift the left hip up. We're going to move that left leg back a little bit, letting the hip settle. And then you can open this right leg as far as you like. You can bring it to 90-90, or you can tuck the foot in. We want both sitting bones to be settled and the spine to remain vertical as we take our twist toward that right leg. Right now, if this knee is floating a lot, just like in our initial breathing, you can support it with a block or stuff a towel underneath. Sitting tall on the sitting bones, we begin to turn the chest toward that right leg. Continue spiraling through the waist. Finally, you put the right hand in back of you, left hand might come to the right knee. And we find a twist that we hold for about a minute. And if you find your right hand doesn't reach the floor exactly, you can put a block or a pillow under that to raise the height of the floor within reach. Get a sense of the origin of your spine deep in your pelvis. And then above the pelvis, feel the rotation begin, lengthening upward as you spiral from bottom to top. Holding here. Feeling the breath in a holistic way, moving through the sides of the body, filling and emptying not only in your front, but in your back as well. About a half a minute to go. Two more breaths in and out. When you release twist, release the twist in the neck first. So you bring your head to square and then unwind from the shoulders and chest through the rib cage, through the waist. Lean back a little bit and we'll do a second round of windshield wipering the legs. And you can squish into the shoulders if you like, letting the knees drop. Other side. And then finally off to the left, and we'll continue directly into the opposite twist. So knees dropping to the left. Move the right knee back. Gentle with that, so never force the knees. You want to keep alignment with the thigh bone and the shins. You can even put your blanket under that if that feels good. Yeah. Will begin to open maybe toward 90 degrees, but maybe not. Again, it depends on your hips and your knees, supporting where necessary. And then begin to turn the chest to match the direction of the pelvis. Ensure that you're sitting upright and long before continuing the twist. And then when you are, start that rotation from the bottom of the waist upward through the height of your rib cage. Continue opening across the chest as you spiral the shoulders, the head and the neck, and then sigh. Here too, we remain for about a minute. And acknowledging that we are assisting a little bit with our hands, with our arms. Try not to use the neck to push or strengthen or brace the shoulders. Mm, feel the shoulder blades, the strength of your biceps and your hands, completely minimizing the effort in the neck. 3 more rounds of breath, please. And then again, re-square the head, release the larger twist, and return to front. Take the legs out in front of you. Ah, move things out of the way. You can again windshield wiper if you like. Mm, we're going to go ahead and lie down onto the back. So you probably want to come off your cushion. Um, I suggest a thin layer of blanket under the bottom of your hips. If you have an additional blanket for your head, you can use that as well, but we don't want the head very far forward here. So lying on the back, maybe a little blanket under the hips. Hug the knees in toward the chest and just breathe for a moment. We have the knees and the feet side by side. We have a little bit of flattening or dropping down through the low back, a little bit of boost or support under the base of the pelvis, under the tailbone. And as you hold the legs in, maybe a little rocking left and right. When you've done that a time or two to each side, go ahead and separate the legs to the distance of the hips. And we're going to move toward a happy baby. So kind of an upside down squat. We've got support for the spine from underneath. We're going to lift the soles of the feet until they're parallel to the ceiling. Right now, if you don't happen to have a yoga strap and you can't reach your feet, then you can also hold on to the calves or the back of the thighs. We're going to try to keep this wide stance of the legs and encourage the knees to drop back on either side of the rib cage. We do have the lower back supported. If the tail rises a little bit, that's fine, but we don't want to put a lot of strain right into the hips or the shoulders. And so you find the position that works for you. And then using the ground for support, settle into posture. Eyes open or closed so long as you retain focus. Convince the hips and the spine that it's fine to release effort. Completely safe and supported in the body. Um, and with breath, those things can often help to find a deeper release. Don't go for that immediately, though. Be patient with the process. We have about a minute more here. We're also helping a little bit with our arms in this posture. So once more, check in that you're not finding arm strength by activating the neck. Feel muscles on the back. Very gentle with the shoulders. One more breath in and out. And then with your hands, guide the legs to a closed position and place your left foot on the ground. We're going to cross the right ankle over top the left knee and find a reclined pigeon. Now, at this point, you might find it more comfortable to remove the mat under your hips. We're going to keep the hips onto ground and not really focus on stretching the legs upward at this point. And then that left leg, the one that's on the ground, or the left foot, you can bring a little closer. We want an open spiral or an external rotation through this right leg and hip. And so you can assist with your hands. If you like, you can eventually thread the gap between the legs, lift the left foot, and support the back of the thigh with a little grip of your hands. And begin to build into a deeper stretch through that outer right hip, preserving the rotation as you find a little bit deeper flexion. Now, we haven't really moved the spine here, right? So we're not tucking and straining to lift the hips, a little bit different than our happy baby. For the last little bit of our stretch, if you like to extend that left leg upward, straightening through the knee or reaching through the knee as you lengthen through the sole of the foot, you can take that variation, but not if it pulls on the low back. So keep the hips softening back into ground and the spine relaxed. One more breath in and out. And then if your left leg is extended upward, go ahead and bend it so you can lower the foot to ground. Uncross the right leg and push those legs long on the floor. So with the legs long on the floor, take a moment, let your lower back in front of the hips lengthen out. And then we're going to take a little side stretch to the right. So it's Banana Asana, which is arguably one of the silliest names in the yin yoga repertoire, but I love it and it'll feel good. So we're going to walk the feet over to the right, a little shuffle, shuffle. And you'll start to feel a stretch through the outer curve of the left hip and thigh. Once you've got your feet off to the right, if you like, you can cross one over the other just to keep them glued down and to keep the hips level. And then we're going to wiggle the upper body off to the right as well. So we have this big rightward facing curve or rightward reaching curve. The whole left side of the body from your cheekbone down through the outer part of the ankle is stretched, but both hips are square to the mat. Both shoulders are square to the mat. And we haven't twisted at all. It's a purely side bending position. Once you're here, if you want to add to this, you can take the arms back overhead. And we just lie here and breathe for about a minute. If you find that reaching the arms back or extending the shoulders back creates tension in the neck, just don't do it, or consider bringing one arm down, in this case, the right one. 2 more rounds of breath in and out. And then when you're done, you're ready to return, make sure you bring the arms down first. You kind of back out of this as you went into it. Readjust the upper body, uncross the ankles, and reshuffle the legs back to center. Before we go into the other side, go ahead and bend your knees. Put the feet flat on the ground and press the hips upward, just balancing the weight in the two legs, balancing the hips. Press all the way up. Inhale here. You can reach the arms back if you like. And then exhale, press all the way back down, bringing the arms forward and down by your sides. We go into our little pigeon stretch from the other side. So with the right foot on the ground, you pick up the left one and cross the ankle over and begin to find that rotation in the left hip. Flex your left foot and feel the alignment of the foot with the shin, with the thigh bone. And try not to side bend here. So keep the tail centered as you rotate the thigh. Have a couple of breaths. And then if you like, you can begin to lift the right foot from the ground, threading the gap between the legs and supporting the back of the thigh. Keep the balance of the back of your pelvis, the length of your spine, and preserve the rotation as you flex a little bit more deeply in the hip. Odds are you're going to feel it in this sort of outer hip pocket area, this trochanteric area. And as you breathe, you can begin to feel a release at different points in the breath, at different points in your hold. If you'd like, you can extend the right leg upward, stretching through the knee, reaching through the sole of the foot. Two more long, slow rounds of breath. If your right leg is extended, bend the knee, lower the foot to the ground, and uncross the left ankle. Slowly stretch the legs out. You might flex and point the feet a couple of times. We are going to go into our banana asana to the other side. So make the hips and the low back comfortable. And then We'll begin to move or shuffle the feet off to the left. Both hips stay flat. And you can again cross the ankles if it helps to keep a little bit more square position through or flat position through the hips. When you've gotten that, you're going to scooch your upper body to the left as well. And really look for that right-sided stretch, that deep opening. Both shoulders on the mat, your gaze is directly forward, although you're welcome to close the eyes if that's more comfortable. You can reach the arms back. And we just lie here and breathe for about a minute. Have 3 more rounds of breath. That breath again moving through the sides of the body, particularly the right side in this stretch, but also washing down through the back of the pelvis, eliminating tension there, down through the front of the thighs, eliminating tension there. When you finish that last round of breath, bring your arms down from overhead if they're lifted. Adjust your upper body back to square, and then cross your ankles and adjust your lower body. And we'll do that brief bridge before moving on. So bend your knees, put your feet flat to the ground, have them pretty close to your hips. And then as you release your exhale, press your hips upward. Feel a nice stretch building in the front of the body and good activation through the bottoms of the feet. Shoulders fall back, chest opens, a big inhale, maybe with arms stretched overhead. And then exhale, bring the arms down, lower the body. Mhm. Go ahead and bend your legs and roll off to one side or the other to come up to sitting. We're going to take this into a prone position, a sphinx stretch, another extension, this time for the chest instead of for the hips. And you might want to have your blocks or whatever you're using as props nearby. So this is done in prone. I'll change my angle here. You're lying on your belly. And you want to have your hips comfortable on the mat. You do not have to have the legs together. You can have a little space here, and you can certainly put a blanket underneath the pelvis if you need a little extra cushioning. You want to bring your body to square, and then as the bottom of the hips settle forward, begin to find the shoulders. So without any other props, you would start with elbows underneath the shoulders and an extension upward through the upper body. You can adjust this lower if you like by sliding the arms out a little bit, or bring it higher by using blocks or bolster, right? To lift the height of the chest, the spine, the shoulders, right? Because we do want to minimize effort, right? This is a yin practice. If this feels like a lot of work, know that you're able, it's fine to shrug your shoulders a little bit. It's also fine to use the block or a bolster or towel as a bit of a prop, right, for the base of the ribs, for the sternum. Bolster might be softer, blanket might be softer still. If you're propped up and your neck still feels a little uncomfortable, you can also prop the head, even allowing the neck to lengthen forward a little bit. If you're up high enough and it feels good to extend the cervical spine, you can stretch the muscles of the throat. And we just hang out here for a little while. Start to notice the details in posture. Feel how the shoulders are relative to each other. Most of us are either right-handed or left-handed, and so that often means that one shoulder or the other is going to want to be forward or up or push a little harder, right? So we want to bring balance into the shoulder girdle. Feel how the shoulders relate to the rib cage and the rib cage to the spine. So in extension, that inner surface of the spine is really opening, right? The inner surface spreading, the front of the ribs spreading in an even way, left and right, as well as up and down your length. Relaxing the weight of the pelvis down or forward into the mat. Soften the front of the hips, letting the thigh muscles go a little bit soft as well. Feel the sides of the waist equally long, all the way down through the sides of the hips and the inner margins of the legs. And for the last little while here, if you want to take it further, you can bend the knees and feet pointed or flexed, doesn't matter, but you can bend the knees and add a little additional stretch for the front of the thighs, allowing the bottom of the hips to drop forward. 2 more rounds of breath. You're almost there. If your knees are bent, allow the legs to drop down. Remove any props you might have under your sternum or your elbows, and let your upper body lower. Rest your head on your hands. With your head resting down, you can roll it a little right, a little left. And then have a couple of breaths in and out. A little mini belly shavasana. We're going to make our way slowly out of this prone position by putting the hands under the shoulders and easing back towards child's pose. You can walk your knees forward. You can throw a blanket underneath them if that feels good. And we're going to sit on our heels and open a little space between the inner hips and thighs. And here you might want to have something to rest the torso or the forehead on. We're going to take this wide-kneed child's pose. Relaxing the torso forward through the inner thighs, resting the head down on something. So if your head doesn't meet the mat, put it on a blanket or a block or a pillow. Try not to lift the hips up in an effort to get the head down, right? So bring the head to an appropriate height and allow the hips to settle. I will say that there are ways you can modify this if this is a lot for your knees. One of the first things you can do modification wise is to just return to happy baby if you really need to not have any weight in your knees. If your knees will tolerate a little bit of weight, but you need some extra help, put a block under your hips. So it takes a little bit of the angle out of the knees and the pressure downward through the weight of your hips. We're here for about a minute more. Allow some of the tension to leave the feet and the ankles, right? The top of the foot, the front of the ankle, as well as the front of the shin. Getting a pretty good stretch here as well. 2 more rounds of breath, please. You can begin to rock your forehead a little left and right. Move your shoulders around a little bit, and then use your hands to help you lift up out of posture. Go ahead and come all the way to hands and knees, and of course, get your props out of the way. We'll do a little bit of cat and cow from this hands and knees position before going into the last couple of postures. Round the spine on your exhale, deeply curving the back, lifting the middle back, dropping the head and the tail. And inhale, go the other way, saddling the back, lifting the head, lifting the tail. Unshrug the shoulders as you do this. And do just a couple more rounds of this. Exhales lead you into flexion. And inhales open you into extension. Let's say 2 or 3 more rounds. When you finish that last round, I'm going to face this way for you. Go ahead and step the left knee behind the right. So it'll feel super awkward at first. We're approaching our cow face pose, our Gomukhasana. It's called shoelace in Yin Yoga. Now, before you sit the hips back, you might want to find a little cushion to put back there. Right? Can't guarantee that you'll need it, but you might. And locate your other props, so blocks and blanket. And then with the heels far enough apart that you can start to move the hips back between the feet. Right. Begin to find your seat here. Right. You might have to adjust your calf muscles and get out of your own way. We do have the hips seated between the feet, and in a perfect world, the knees are stacked and we don't have any strain on them. But if you find that one or the other of your knees is kind of lifted up and needing support, you can always wedge a block under. Right? Blanket usually works pretty well for the bottom knee if that's the one that needs the support. You just sit here for a moment. If a full shoelace just doesn't feel so great for you can take the bottom leg and stretch it out in front and do a half shoelace. Right. We are going to take this into a little bit of a forward lean. So, whichever shoelace you're working in, begin to again tilt the pelvis forward. And finally, to round and release the spine over. You're going to want to support your body weight again. I usually find it more comfortable to put something under my torso or sternum and then just kind of prop into my arms. Right? That works with hands on the floor as well. If you're using something on your legs, just make sure that you're not putting it on the knee joint itself. Make sure that you're able to breathe. And not just breathe, but breathe fully. So take the full length of your inhale and your exhale. Moving the breath through tight areas. Maybe feeling a subtle widening across the base of the hips and then across the span of your sacrum. Early in practice, we had another forward bend that we held for a generous amount of time. Here too, you might find that after a bit of time in this posture, you feel like you want to adjust, deepen or back off or just get into a place that feels more integrated or more embodied. Free to do that. We have another minute here. Keep your thoughts where you are. Have two more rounds of breath. After that last round of breath, slowly, slowly come up out of this. Get your props out of the way and help the legs out of position. Mm. We're going to take the legs into a wide stance. And before we do the second side, have a brief straddle. Right. So we keep a sense of length through the torso as we again tilt the pelvis a little forward through the hips and the thighs. We're not going to hold the straddle for long. We're going to hold it for the purposes of really rebalancing through the hips. So you find the angle that you want to work at and find a prop that you can support yourself with. And just feel a gentle tractioning forward. And just to be clear, the stretch is primarily through inner thighs. It should feel like a lengthening, but not a pulling on the low back. You might be pretty high. Mm. You might have no curve at all in the spine. Totally fine. Make little movements through the head, ensuring that the neck hasn't locked. Take 2 more rounds of breath. And then push yourself up. Move whatever's in front of you. If you liked that approach that we used to come into Gomukhasana, you can use it for the second side. So ease yourself forward into hands and knees. And we do want the other knee on top this time. So I'm going to tuck my right leg behind. So my left leg is on top. Spin the feet apart so you have room for your hips. And then slowly walk yourself back. Right. Maybe landing on a cushion on the floor. Adjust your calves. Right. Support or pad the knee where necessary. Now for the second side, I know that mine is tighter. Can feel that right off the bat. So I'm going to wedge a little blanket underneath to support the height of my knee and take some of the drag off of my hip. We hang out here for a little bit, allowing the pelvis to settle. And then if and as you're able, you can begin to lean and then round forward. And of course, you'll remember that if you prefer to do a half shoelace, that the bottom leg can be out in front as you round over the front leg or top leg. All right, you guys are doing great. Stay with it. 2 more rounds of breath. Using your hands, gently bring yourself up. Unfold or unpretzel your legs. And if you like that brief straddle stretch, we can do it again. We are moving to Shavasana next. And so if this felt good to you, take a second little round where you just reach forward a little bit. Right. Alternatively, you might just want to lean back and do a little windshield wiper. Right. You might want to lie on your back and do a quick bridge, pressing up and down. So quick was the wrong word, just brief. Yeah. Release that next breath. And then we'll lie down on the ground and have just a couple minutes of breathing, letting all of this work integrate. So, making your way down, a little mat under your head is fine, or over the body is fine. Maybe a rolled up towel or bolster under the back of your knees, or knees bent and falling together. That works too. Lay onto your back and let everything just go limp. Legs go limp, arms go limp. The weight of your body settling into ground. Eyes closed and breathing regular. Almost a sleeping breath, filling the belly and the chest, and then flowing back out. Growing quiet in the body, feeling the firmness of ground underneath, and your ability to let go of effort, to let go of judgment, to let go of anticipation, and just to feel the sweetness of the flow of breath. Begin to gently turn the head side to side, to move through your fingers and your toes. Maybe moisten the lips. Inhale and exhale in a sigh. Bend the knees and maybe sway them left to right. We're going to begin to wake and come to sitting. Before sitting, though, roll off to lie on one side, knees bent, head resting in the crook of your arm, and have a couple of breaths here. And when you're ready to sit, put your hands to ground and help yourself up to Sukhasana. And we'll cross the legs and finish briefly here. Eyes closed or downcast, very gentle with your focus, very present. Breath in, breath out. When you inhale, sweep the arms upward, press palms overhead, and then release breath as you draw the thumbs down over the forehead, the lips, hands over heart center. Breathe in and out, holding this moment, grateful for it. Thanks so much for trying out class and popping in. I hope your day is wonderful.